The construct-aware individual has a global historical perspective. There's a stepping back and observing of meaning-making from an even higher altitude and a bigger picture view than in the previous stages. You take responsibility for the meaning that you give to the world and to your life. No longer do situations and people and things have inherent meaning, but rather you realize that the meaning that they have is what my mind is projecting. What my mind needs for its egoic purposes, for its survival, is what I'm projecting, and I can change what I'm projecting if I'm willing to change myself. That's a huge, huge new way of interfacing with reality when you can make that shift. But of course, it takes a lot of responsibility taking, which can be scary and uncomfortable, and most people don't want to take that much responsibility. So when your girlfriend or boyfriend leaves you, or when someone insults you, or when a terrorist attack happens, or when you see some political news, somebody won an election, somebody lost an election. Before, at the earlier stages, you would tend to think that all these things have inherent baked-in meaning, like terrorism is bad and evil, and when my girlfriend or boyfriend leaves me, that's because she's being a bitch or whatever, and that's bad. Or when my boss says something, criticizes me, oh, that's the boss is being critical of me, blah blah blah, and so you're playing these sorts of games. But now you start to realize at this construct-aware stage that, oh, wait a minute, I'm assigning meanings to all these different things, and I can change that such that I'm not being driven by this unconscious meaning-making process, but I'm more conscious about how I give things meanings. And you can start to question the kind of meanings you give to things. Maybe some of the old meanings you gave to things weren't very resourceful or were very limited, didn't have a big enough perspective. And maybe now you realize that it was just all meaningless. At this stage, there's a realization of our human need for map making and trying to organize experience and knowledge into ever more complex matrices and meta theories. At this stage, as soon as one becomes aware of one's need to reify experience and to tell a good self story with a permanent self as its main actor, one deconstructs any such identification. So at this stage, you're not completely transcendent of the ego. You're still mostly living from ego at this stage, and you fall into traps of the ego at this stage. But the difference is, at lower stages, when people are acting from ego, they act from ego so fully, they are so hypnotized by ego, they don't even understand what they're doing. But at this stage, there's enough distance, detachment, and self-awareness that one is able to say, oh, yeah, in that argument that I had with my girlfriend or boyfriend yesterday, I fell into ego, and then I constructed a story about how I was the good guy, and she was she was wrong, and I was good, and she was doing something wrong to me, and I blamed her. Oh, okay, I realized what I was doing. That was my ego acting up again. And I was creating a narrative about how I'm the victim in this situation, and I was creating this whole story about it. Now I'm aware enough to realize that that's something I'm doing. I can take responsibility for it, and I can tell myself to stop it, and I can maybe apologize, or I can sit down and have a communication with my partner. I can say, hey, yesterday I let my ego get the better of me, and I started, creating these stories, and I started to act like a victim. I fell into my old patterns, but I realized that I was making a mistake. So, I'm going to make an effort to change that. I'm not going to do that anymore. And I realized that things are not the way that I thought they were yesterday. See? And so in this way, you can catch yourself. You still make mistakes. You still fall into self-deception, but then you catch yourself and you relatively quickly make corrections. This is a huge, huge difference to be able to do this versus a person who's not able to do this. This is huge. This will change your whole life if you're able to do that. Of course, not just in relationships, but everywhere across your entire life. So at the early stages of development, you have no idea that you're deceiving yourself. At the higher stages of development, you start to get a little bit of an idea of how much you're deceiving yourself, but you still are mostly clueless. Then at even higher stages of development, you realize, holy shit, I'm so much deceiving myself, and I'm aware of how much I'm deceiving myself, but I can't stop deceiving myself because I'm attached to it. That's huge to be able to get to that stage. And you feel real bad because you can see yourself getting deceived by your own mind, but you still can't quite surrender the attachment to the deception. You don't really know yet how to escape the deception every time. So, and then at the very ultimate stages, you will be able to just, you'll be so quick at seeing the self-deception, you'll be able to stop it before it even starts. But that's really going to be in the next unitive stage, not yet here, not fully here. At this stage, you're becoming aware of the self at the center of this construction process of the mind. Right? So the self is warping all of reality to suit itself so that it can survive as a self. Because the self is not a physical thing, it's merely the amalgamation of all of its ideas about itself. In a sense, if you stop thinking about yourself, you'll disappear as a self, which is why the self is constantly thinking about everything, including itself, relating everything back to itself in order to construct a sense of self. And this is how you construct your entire life. This is how you were actually born. Birth is not a physical activity that happens to you. Birth is the process of thinking about yourself as a self, and therefore you create the self. And of course, death is the same thing. Death is not a physical process of physically dying. Death is a process of the cessation of thinking of yourself as a self. Yeah, think about that. Think about what would happen if you went through your life never thinking of yourself as a self again. Never thinking that you were born, never thinking that you had a past, never thinking about your memories, never thinking about you and what you want and your desires and your needs and how everything relates to you. Imagine if you just never engaged in that mental activity ever again.